Good afternoon, everyone. I am Constantinou, the H. Carton Rogers III, Vice Provost and Director of the Penn Libraries. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the event celebrating the fields of transformation. An internationally acclaimed artist, Claudy Jongstra, that we are so fortunate to have at the Penn Libraries. One of the greatest joys of returning to campus is seeing our students back in our library spaces. And the fields of transformation, as you see in my background, is such a vital part of the experience in the Moelis Family Grand Reading Room. The Grand Reading Room provides an atmosphere of solitude for contemplation. The gentle tones and the textures of the fields of transformation enrich the students' experiences. With quiet focus, surrounded by the art piece and the large windows, the natural light looking out on the greenery of our campus, our students grow in knowledge and in perspective. Claudy Jongstra describes fields of transformation as a visual representation of knowledge evolving into wisdom as it moves from the head to the heart. And in turn, we here at the Penn Libraries, we strive to inspire our students with intellectual curiosity, discovery, and exploration, all very critical to the library's vision of advancing knowledge to power Penn and better the world. As always, we remain grateful to the generosity of our donors who help us transform our library spaces to become a learning space for critical inquiry and creative expression. In particular, the Moelis family for the creation of the Grand Reading Room, the Lori and Rick Glicklick, whose generosity supported the Glicklick family art wall that displays fields of transformation. And now, I am delighted to introduce my colleague, Lynn Marsden-Atlass. Lynn is the executive director of the Arthur Ross Gallery at the university and the university curator of Penn's art collection. Lynn brings expertise from her previous roles as senior curator at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Before coming to Penn and to Philadelphia, Lynn was a curator of contemporary art at the Chrysler Museum and associate director and registrar at the Golby College Museum of Art. Lynn will introduce Claudy Jongstra and she will lead the discussion with the artist. Lynn, you have the screen.
Thank you, Constantia. Welcome, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this wonderful artist talk of Claudy Jongstra. Let me talk for just a moment about the Arthur Ross Gallery. It's a catalyst for creativity. We're a resource for the entire university community across schools and departments, as well as the Philadelphia community and scholars from around the world. We are a learning lab where people engage with important and often rarely seen works of art and artifacts from a diverse range of time periods, media, and cultures. The Arthur Ross Gallery was founded in 1983 with a gift from Arthur Ross to share his joy of art by bringing important works to campus to inspire new generations. The gallery is located in the landmark Fisher Fine Arts Library building that was designed by Frank Furness, 1891, in the center of Penn's campus. Currently on view at the gallery is an exhibition called God Complex, Different Philadelphia, which is curated by Roberto Lugo through December 19th. And I hope that you'll join us to see this lively and interactive collection. The Penn Art Collection, equally, I'm changing hats here as the university curator. The University of Pennsylvania Art Collection is comprised of over 8,000 objects that are installed in over 115 different locations across campus. It includes paintings, sculptures, monumental works, public works outside, works of art on paper, photography, and decorative arts. The collection is built entirely from gifts to the university from the time of Ben Franklin, 1740, until today. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Claudy Jongstra. She is known worldwide for her monumental murals of felt and silk, whose textures and nuanced tones reflect an innovative use of natural pigments and organic materials. In 2001, Jongstra established her school in the rural northern province of Friesland, the Netherlands, where a flock of indigenous Drenthe Heath sheep and a botanical dye garden provide both physical and inspirational foundation for each of her charismatic artworks. Engaged in collaborative scientific research, Jongstra recontextualized centuries of art technologies and knowledge in a contemporary artistic practice. Jongstra's oeuvre, often installed in large public spaces, is included in many international museums, as well as private and corporate collections. And I first saw Claudy's work at the Barnes Foundation here in Philadelphia, and was later invited to hear her presentation for Fields of Transformation. So welcome, Claudy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me for the talk.
Yes.
This it all started, I think, 2 decades ago with coming from fashion and working with locally sourced materials. And already heard in the introduction, this is the main material where my artworks are made from. It's called Drenthe Heath. It's an indigenous breed. It's the oldest breed from Northern Europe. Only 1,200 left. And as you can see here, it's like a very interesting work, because the shepherd, how he treats the sheep, but also how he maintains the land, means that this eventually becomes a very harmonious biotope. So this way of grazing prevents a certain area, a natural reserve, of becoming a forest. You can see they're very, they have this very intense fleece, long haired, and they have an incredible softness. They are the wool is very gentle, and also big impact on the quality of the wool is how the sheep have worked in a year on a certain landscape. So we have a private reserve, so they don't have to have transportation, because a lot of the sheep are what you might know, can endure a lot of stress, and stress has a big impact on the quality of the wool. So once a year, the shepherd very gently shears the wool, and since you can say since the last 3-4 years, we have had in the Netherlands, at least, we have 1.5 million tons of wool, this type of wool, of these indigenous sheep, yearly, you can say, considered as a waste product. So in the Netherlands, but also we hear that in many other countries in Europe, that indigenous sheep used not for meat production, but their main purpose is to preserve land. They work on Dutch dikes, for example. They are considered not to have an economic purpose, just only the wool. But the wool price is so low on the market, so we have the situation now in the Netherlands that this is something, working in a very circular way. This is something we feel we have to do something about. At least we have to put attention to, because the wool is put to fire, is thrown away, etc. So what we do, when we make works, artworks in buildings, in public spaces, we always try to evoke an awareness that we find purpose for this precious material, because in Europe for many ages this was the only material it kept people warm. And in the UK, in Britain, the president of the parliament still is sitting on a woolen cushion, and that shows the appreciation for this material, for its history. The value of wool is something we care a lot for, because it's a material so beautiful, and just when you use it also in a building, it is in fact it is a healthy material. The wool is one main source where we work from, but you can say all my artworks, they find their base directly coming from nature. This is a greenhouse. It's an historical greenhouse. We have started our farm, I think, seven years ago, and then on that property, it was abandoned, and we worked for 7 years now on the farm, growing plants for color, but also for food. We do sometimes we organize dinners or lunches for people interested in our philosophy and the way how we work. And you can see this is a very specific greenhouse. It is originally from Belgium, and it was also doomed to be destroyed because it was not considered to be efficient. So we deconstructed it in Belgium, and we reconstructed it in the Netherlands. What is so beautiful about this type of greenhouse that it's very poetic, and it's also very functional, but you can also see the construction, so how the windows work, and 1,000 glass windows are in this greenhouse, and the bricks are from the region. So we value also a lot handmade labor, handmade processes, because if you make something by hand, it still gives you the opportunity to experiment, or to interfere, or to make, for example, a human failure. And I think that is the beautiful part. If you can play, so to say, there is a space for research and experiment. This is part of the garden. It is a very wild garden. It is an organized chaos. The beds are organically shaped, and there is a variety of indigenous vegetation, medicinal color, for plant-based colors, and also for food. Because you can say from the Middle Ages, especially in a monastery, there was always this kind of combination that a plant was used for many applications. And sometimes when people are working with us, not only students but also our team, you can say it feels like a new form of monastery, because working in this biodynamic garden, it is very important to have and to work not in a horizontal economical time space, but more in a vertical time space. Time for consideration, contemplation, time for care, and not only work for a beneficial purpose. Because if you tend and you take care of the garden, you can see all these processes in all seasons. We keep sometimes when a tree, for example, falls, we leave it for small insects, etc., etc. So the garden is a place where everybody in our team works. We have 2 locations. we have the ateliers, and we have the garden, the farm, the field lab. And here also the designers always work also in the garden, so they can understand and appreciate a process of growing, taking care of the land, and know a lot about farming. And you can say that everybody who works in our team is not only a designer or an apprentice or a plant-based dyer or a spinner or a wool washer, but also a farmer and a shepherd and a caretaker. This is a project we did with the Arts Academy, one of the art academies in the Netherlands. It was a project about woad. Woad is the European indigo. The leaves are harvested in the first year, and after a process of fermentation, you can also conserve woad for a very long time. We work with many universities and especially the universities we work with in Amsterdam and Utrecht. They give us access to so-called books of secrets, where a lot of the recipes have been preserved. The recipes, they inform you about color palettes coming from the 15th century or 16th or 17th century. And what we do at the farm, we reconstruct. So that's very interesting also for us to reconstruct and to work from these old manuals. Here you can see a dye bath coming from the woad, from the European indigo. When you have, for example, this dye vessel, the wool is very creamy. When you take it out by oxidation, by the touch of air, it will turn into, here we can say green, but keeping it in the air for another few moments, it will turn into blue. And we have worked on a project with the University of Utrecht for many years. And the project is called Burgundian Black in the Artechne project. And Burgundian Black is the most difficult natural dye to make. So if you would be an alchemist in the 15th, 16th century, and you would make this incredible, rich and very, very layered black, you would be a walnut dyer, an indigo dyer, a madder dyer. So all the skills, they are collected and conserved in the natural black. And recently, a few weeks ago, the new museum in San Diego was opened, and we have made a mural, a textile mural in the new Minguet, recently reopened museum in San Diego. That's a wall completely with all the tones and the shades and all the different nuances in this black palette. Because a natural dye is something, I think if you've ever seen it, incredible. It is not uniform, it is not flat, it's super rich, it has so many layers, and it gives a lot of warmth also in the space. And also the quality of it is that it harmonizes the space. So people always ask me when I place the work in the building, does it interact, or how does it relate to the space? And I'm always surprised that the work always takes its place very gently and is there, present, but not aggressive, not very, not having a very egoistic appearance. And once Todd Williams, who we work with on the Barnes Foundation, he said to me, "Your work has no ego," and I found that it's for me it's like a big compliment, because we always make, our team and me, we always make a work for the place, for the location, for the building, and it's not a work in a stock list, but it's always meant to be really connecting to the building. There's another color, it's called Weld. It is it's one of the oldest dye plants, and it is giving a super vibrant appearance. It is always a joy when we make our we prepare our crop menu for already in October, November for the coming year, and then already from, you can say, from March, April, first crops come from the land, and then until October we have still very fresh crops. So at our farm, at the field lab, we have different types of plants, but also we collaborate with local farmers, biodynamic farmers, also to diversify their crops, because we have also in Europe the situation with extreme climate changes. There was a lot of drought this year. We had in France, for example, the grapes were. I mean, there was a very not very fruitful year for the grapes. So if farmers have diversity also in their crop palette, they could have an economic, more sustainable structure. So also financially for them, it could be an alternative, very interesting alternative, not only to have a more biodiverse, or to have more, the impact also for the soil is very strong. The vitality of the soil, of course, when you have crop rotation, is very interesting, but also economic perspective. And you can say since the Industrial Revolution 100 years ago, plant-based dyes completely disappeared from our environment. We don't see them anymore. And also for us, it's very important to value, same as the sheep and the wool, to revalue and show people the beauty and also the importance of this global legacy, global DNA. This is in one of our ateliers. After the wool is dyed, they go to the atelier. You see a process of carding, which means it's calming of the wool. It's all hand labor, and you can have a beautiful color coming from the dyer's atelier going into the carding mill, and then you can also combine many textures together. We have no waste. Everything is very useful. We reuse all materials, so there is no waste material in our studio. And you can see on the right, this is a very rich palette. It is my team always prepares a palette of colors for every project we are working on. And then is the composition. So literally the wool fibers, but also linen and sometimes silk in combination, they work very well with wool. They are composed on the working tables. Usually we make a concept for when we have a commission. It's a narrative, and we compose after presenting the narrative and the concept to the client. We always say that it's you don't exactly see and also receive what we have designed, because we always feel the opportunity when a beautiful color appears in our dye lab, we should implement that. So that's also very important in these processes of hand labor, that there is still space for improvisation. And after the composition of wool is on these tables, water will be added to it, and then by friction, it's like a magical process. The wool fibers they intertwine, and it's an irreversible process. And the fabric is very light. It's a lot of volume, but it's very light. So it's also the work for the library. There was the triptych we made that was our it was our biggest work ever made on these tables. So yeah, it's very spectacular because yeah, it is very interesting that this magical process of intertwining, yeah, at the end that you have this large scale mural. Here you can see the wool has been, there was a friction process was before they have gone on the table, and yeah, we have a very large working space. We work in a very rural community. If we have a very large commission, we usually can work in a farmer's barn or an abandoned school. And so there's a lot of opportunity and also a lot of collaboration for us working there, because people in this small area, in this small community, they're very open to us, very collaborative, and there's always a lot of space if we need an extra room or an extra space to work. For the finish of Fields of Transformation, we used hand spun yarns, and we counted them. There were 10,000 hand stitches in that work. And hand spun is also very interesting, because a hand spun yarn, you can say that's an identity of the person behind the spinning wheel. And this a hand spun yarn is also metaphorically speaking also interesting, because I always remember Gandhi's words saying that when a person makes his own yarn, then he has a complete independency. The person can make a yarn, can make his own clothes, can make his own house, like the yurt. And it is always interesting to see when people are sitting to a spinning wheel or working with a spinning wheel for the first time. You can see if they can connect to the rhythm, if they can connect to the material. And sometimes when we have young children, since we do a lot of education, young children sitting behind the spinning wheel, they immediately connect, they immediately can make this irregular thread. And that is also something interesting, because the older people get, usually they're much more in their heads, and they find it difficult to really give yourself to the material. So the Fields of Transformation work here, you can see the details. A lot of walnut is used, the indigo, the European indigo, but also we used for the dark blues, we use the Asian variety. The greens are made from onion skin in combination with the indigo, and a lot of neutrals also used there. Details where you can see it's like a painted brush or brush stroke, but then with fibers. And the work was enormous. We never saw it hanging because we didn't find a space in the Netherlands where we could literally hang it and see it. So for us, when it was revealed, it was like a sensational moment, and that was very impressive. We worked beautifully together with Gensler, with Bridget Abraham, who emailed me in a summer saying, Claudy, we have a beautiful project coming up. Are you interested? And I still find this project is one of the, at least one of the top 3 projects our studio ever did. It was a beautiful collaboration with all the people involved, all the stakeholders, and it was, for us it was something, how this work should relate to a space, the purpose, the library, a place for contemplation, a place for softness, a place where you can be at ease, but also a place for intellectual development, for poetry, and all these elements. When you see the blues, the blue tones representing the intellectualism. When you see the neutrals referring to sources, and then when the gold is there too, because that represents empathy. So it's a combination of these three elements symbolizing, I think, what the work expresses. And here it is. It was very impressive when it was hanging, and yeah, there is a enormous dynamic movement. You see the strokes where all the hours and the work of carding is shown. I think when you see that work, when you are in that space, usually people don't recognize the technique, or they don't recognize the colors. So it always evokes curiosity, and then that's for us very beautiful, because then you can open up a dialogue and a conversation about haptic knowledge, about the disappearing of these ancient traditions, and we find it very important to value them. So this is a very it's very also very textured, the work. You can see it here, the different materials, the Drent heat, but also the linen structure and the cotton, the organic cotton, showing a lot of sculpturality, and yeah, I think also with the light in the space. Every moment will be different, and yeah, I think it's very harmonious to work there. You can see it here too. It is completely part of the interior. It is really part. It embraces the space, and it is very yeah, it's very sculptural. The triptych, you see another one. It's a panel. Also expressing again the color palette, more compressed, and yeah, it has beautiful tones, and I think you can see here that it really harmonizes in the space. It doesn't interfere with the interior. It goes so well with the building, and yeah, it's we were very grateful that for this incredibly beautiful space, these works yeah, harmonize very well.
All right. Thank you, Claudy.
Thank you.
And I have a few questions that we'd like to have answered. Left to their own lives, how do sheep self-shear, or do they at all? They must get hugely out of balance if not trimmed.
Yeah.
Also, that's
Yeah, so I think around May, June, that's the best moment. And correct, you have to shear them, because you know wool is very has a very the insulation capacity of wool is so intense. They will be very, very hot in summertime if they're not taking their fleeces off. So yeah, we have always in May, June a very joyful moment. We have a lot of piles of, yeah, we have 250 of them. So it's nearly a quarter of the whole population in the Netherlands. So we usually work with the whole harvest of the wool 1 year around.
great. Someone has asked, what is the longevity of natural dyes? And does this differ depending on source and the plant? How do you plan for preservation in relation to sunlight or other environmental factors over time?
Yeah, we the plants and the colors we use are called so-called grand tints, especially the weld shown in the presentation, the indigo, and there is another one, the red color. It's called madder, M-A-D-D-E-R. These three, they are very strong colors. They have a very high rate on light sensitivity. They keep. I mean, we have to guarantee in the Netherlands 40 to 60 years in the building, so that's quite substantial. And last year we did a very interesting project. We had 10 different places in the Netherlands. Among them also some botanical gardens where we grew the European indigo, the woad. So the soil quality, sand or clay, had a huge impact on the color palette. So in the northern part of the Netherlands, the blues were very greenish. More south you came, there were more mustard. So the soil quality has a huge impact on eventually on the color range, but also of course natural conditions. And what we try to do now is not only grow the plants, but also harvest the seeds, because if you win the seeds in your own area and you grow them again, that's something that's very important, because the plant has had the natural conditions, and the seed winning is from the region. Usually when people buy seeds, they come from a laboratory, and they're very they're not site specific. So for example, a seed coming from the seed industry might not, seed from a certain plant might not grow well in Spain, and might grow very well in Scandinavia. So what we always try to do is, if we collaborate with farmers, that we train them also to win their own seeds, also for independency, because they have to pay patents yearly. They have to pay patents for a seed, and if you win your own seed, autonomy, especially we have seen that in COVID times, autonomy is something we find very important, that you can live in a certain way in an autarkic system, that you can work on your own quality, and that you're independent. And independent structures we find very interesting also as a future model for ateliers.
Thank you. Here's a question. Please say a few words about your staff and colleagues in your studio. Where are they from, and how do you train them?
We have a very diverse palette of team members. We have a team member at the moment working from Yale. She is doing a master there. So she was in the Netherlands. She came from New York, studied architecture at Bennington, and she worked in the Netherlands for 5 years, now returned to the US, and still works remote for us, doing a master at Yale. We have a lot of people come from Design Academy in the Netherlands, in Eindhoven, the famous art school, I think you all know. But we have people in our studio with a background in farming, with a background in philosophy. There is not a specific profile for people who work at our, you can say, team or community. And one of our latest team members she graduated 2 years ago from a university in Oxford, studying economy and management, because I think it's very interesting for us too. How do we value, how do we articulate economically the processes how we work? These kind of everything is about what I also spoke about, is about time consuming processes, but how do we value that? Do we need to compete, or do we have our own economy in the process of our work? And how do you value, for example, or how do you a lot of the things we do, especially with the crop rotation and the quality of the botanical plants, we can see that the value of that is very high. But how do you place that in a contemporary context, economically speaking? And if we work with farmers, how do we find new forms of how do we find new monetary forms to work with them? How do we I mean, where do we relate to? I mean, if there is a farmer just growing potatoes, I mean, is that our competition, you know? Or is the competition we grow crops because it is important that we can still restore a Rembrandt or a Vermeer or a Van Gogh? So that's something we are working on with our new economists.
That's a fascinating topic. I have a question here. The process of growing and creating is very beautiful. I, of course, also love the resurrection of past processes of growing and using everything nature provides. There are all so many layers of your artwork that it is hard to render it all. Being Scandinavian, I recognize many of your processes, including the shearing and the weaving. Do you know if anyone works with similar techniques that you do, but in Scandinavia? I would love to make connections between what happens in your studio and workspace and the Netherlands and Scandinavia.
We had many requests from people from Scandinavia to do an internship, so and they also returned. So what we usually see is that people start their own small practice, or because especially in Scandinavia they have a lot of indigenous sheep. The Gotland, for example, with its own quality. It's a beautiful breed, and it's very. I think what we try to do is that it doesn't. I mean, it's important that if you see local traditions, and if you can work with the local context and make the translation also to and the connection to towards. And make it accessible also for another audience, I believe that you can find a basis in education, because we see that since we started doing a lot of educational programs, we call it earth-based, an earth-based curriculum. We see if there is a change on the base in a development, I think that's a major starting point. We are starting an official school in November, next to our atelier. It's called a Phi School, PHI, the Phi School, and the school is a school for all techniques like weaving, spinning, plant-based dyeing, but it can also be a ceramic. It can be many, it can have many forms. But I think when there is when you have a process like we do, especially also connecting to that understanding of coming from a seed and turning into a yarn, that can have a big it can have a huge value also for people's development, because a lot of people we see they don't feel connected, or they feel lost. And if you are part of this circular chain, you feel that we care. And we see a lot of changes in young students' attitude, but also if you go to a more practical school, I mean, for a lot of these kids coming, for example, from low social classes, I mean, climate change is not on an agenda because you have different urgencies. But if you, and I can understand that because you are in a modus of survival, but if you can show the beauty of nature, if you can show processes, if you can connect them, especially these kind of young people, to a very understandable world, that gives a feeling of belonging, and that makes it very valuable to keep on developing more educational programs.
That's wonderful. I think that's a great idea. And I don't know how you do it with all everything that you do, but I think that's a wonderful process. We have a question here about how has the demand for natural art changed since the pandemic began? And has it? That's the question.
We feel that especially in the US, there's a lot of attention for healthy environments, and we hear it from architects where we work with. There is a big emphasis on working with materials in spaces coming from nature, natural materials, because also I think what we see usually in buildings, if there is not, for example, porosity, I mean, the condition in a space can be very also harmful for your health. And Parsons, a new school in New York, they have this beautiful research program having a big database on what to use in a space, what has impact on your literally on your well-being. And we experience also in conversation with US architects that there is I can say, you're especially also with Scandinavia front running in having a big emphasis on natural materials in buildings. So yeah, that's fantastic, because a clay wall or woolen tapestry, it is something, of course, was always especially in Europe, in our environment, but also clay construction. I mean, if you see in Northern Africa, people used a clay wall in combination with wool for strength and for lightness. So it was always there, and if we can revive that, I think that's something also very sustainable, because it is already in our global DNA, in our knowledge. I mean, we still have references, and I think we see also a tendency of people building eco houses, going very well and very harmonious in their environment, etc. So I think it is something we have experienced that people are very thankful for.
Thank you. I think one last question here, and there are so many varying textures. And the question is, are all these textures derived originally from the combing of the wool? My understanding is that once you design it with layers, but I think I need you to clarify that.
Yes, you can say that the main material we work with is wool, but I found it very interesting also in combination, for example, with linen, with flax, because flax is also a beautiful crop for us to grow, complex though, but the linen fiber has a very different attitude, and I think showing a richness or a variety in natural materials. Also cotton, for example, we did a project with some cotton farmers, organic, in Mali, in Africa. Also very important for us to collaborate with them, because as you know, cotton is a very water consuming process, and the organic farmers, they have organized themselves in a corporation in Mali, small scale, and also for them seeing their work and their effort them to continue their philosophy, their way of working. So working together with small scale initiatives, but with top quality production, that's something we appreciate a lot.
And Claudy, one last question. This must come from a conservator. How do you keep the natural risks at bay, like moths from a wool sweater on the piece?
Yeah. I think what we do is usually we keep. I mean, you cannot prevent a woolen tapestry from never having a moth on them, but yeah, what we keep them when you use, for example, feather dusting, especially with a mural like yours. You have to be attentful. We have in a space, usually there are traps, so you can detect especially the material. And if the work is, especially also in buildings, when there would be a situation that there were moths, you can easily remove the work. I mean, this is a big tapestry, but you could freeze it. So 2 weeks in a freezer, -20 degrees Celsius, is something what works very well. And so we never treat the wool chemically, but the moths, they love usually the darkness, and they love the wool which is not very clean. So in that sense, the wool we use is washed, and yeah, they are not placed in a very dark space. So for now, there was never in that sense a situation where we had to do something. I mean, when you have a woolen sweater in a closet closed, and when you take it out after the summer, I know that also that you could have the moths, but you have to keep it. Yeah, in this case also, in the light is very important. They don't like lightness.
Well, we'll keep the lights on in that case. Thank you so much, Claudy, for this wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm going to turn it back now to Constantia.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Claudy, so much for sharing your time with us, your creative insights, and of course, for your meaningful contributions to art and to the Penn Library's masterpiece. I feel so fortunate and so lucky that we are here in this room experiencing this beautiful, inspiring piece with our students. Thank you so much. And Lynn, thank you so much on behalf of the Penn Libraries. And thank you to the Arthur Rohr's Gallery and for your partnership. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Wishing you wonderful, very afternoon. Thank you.